Alrighty, human geography students, here's our next video. Where are agricultural regions in MDCs? And what we're going to focus on is 6 different types of commercial farming. There they are, all 6 of them. I gave them to you, so don't worry. We're going to head to the first one here. Mixed crop and livestock farming. It is actually the most common form of commercial farming. And where it is found, well, basically the Corn Belt. If you look at the map to the right there, you can see the states that are highlighted. That is the AKA Corn Belt, which is basically found west of the Appalachians or around 98 degrees west longitude within the US. Also, this type of farming can be found in much of Europe, all the way from France to Russia. Now, crops are indeed grown, but most of the crops are fed to the livestock. Now, which in turn the livestock produce fertilizer via manure, which then in turn is put on to the crops that make it grow. Now, the majority of the land, again, is devoted to crops. Yes, some are sold, but most of it is fed to the animals. The majority of sales, though, are derived from animal products such as beef, milk, and eggs. What are some benefits of a mixed farm? Well, farmers distribute the workload more evenly throughout the year. In other words, when it comes time for harvesting crops, well, they focus their attention on that. Yes, then they still feed the animals. Now, this reduces seasonal incomes for farmers as well, so they don't just get paid a handsome amount during the harvest season when they can sell animal products year-round. They also practice something called crop rotation, which we talked a little bit about in class. This is when farmers divide their fields into sections, and each field is planted on a planned cycle. So, for example, half the field is planted with this crop, and the other half will be planted with this crop, and then they cycle through different crops each year. Now, this helps in 2 ways. It helps with soil exhaustion and replenishment of nutrients. Let's get on to our next type of farming, dairy farming. This is perhaps the most important type of commercial farming, and here's the reason why. In MDCs, the demand for milk has greatly increased, thus the demand for dairy farming has greatly increased. So where can dairy farms be found? Well, primarily in the northeast of the United States, southeast Canada, and even in northwest Europe and southeast Asia. Now, India is the largest milk producer. If you remember, we saw that map where cattle was a large percentage of livestock in India. Well, here's the reason why. Now, LDCs also account for 51% of milk produced, so it's a good amount of milk by LDCs. The problem with dairy farming, it's very labor intensive and very expensive. Cows must be milked twice a day, and the winter feed for cows is very expensive. And also, and I mentioned this in class, milk is highly susceptible to economic downturns. When the economy goes down, well, you don't need milk to survive, right? So people aren't going to buy it. When the economy's on the up, well, people buy milk. They can afford it. All right, let's go on to grain farming. Grains are a major crop on most farms in MDCs and LDCs. Now, these grains include wheat, corn, oats, barley, rice, and millet, and some others. Now, grain is used primarily for human consumption on these farms, not livestock versus the mixed farm. Now, these grains are sold directly to manufacturers and specifically breakfast, cereal, and snack food companies such as General Mills. Oh, the power of wheat. Let's take a moment here to talk about it. It's the most profitable grain that anyone can grow. It's stored and transported very easily. It's actually the world's leading export crop. Interestingly enough, the United States and Canada produce 50% of all the wheat grown and sold in the world within the breadbasket of the US. You can see it to the right there. Now, another benefit of wheat is it provides economic and political strength as something called a staple crop. And what a staple crop is, it's a very common crop consumed around the world. Wheat is used in a lot of different products. So if you control a majority of the wheat production, you control a good amount of economic and political power. All right, on to our next one, livestock ranching, and that's just the commercial grazing of livestock over an extended area. It's practiced mostly in MDCs where vegetation is poor or sparse. There are other examples as well. Cattle ranching in Texas, North Dakota, even we see livestock ranching in Australia, Argentina, and Uruguay. Now, this is really practiced in Europe besides Portugal and Spain. All right, Mediterranean agriculture. Well, where is this? You would think just in the Mediterranean. That is true, but it can also be found in California, Chile, and Southwest Africa and Australia. And here's the reason why. They all share a similar physical environment. They're near the sea, they have prevailing winds that keep their plants moist and cool during the summer, and they have moderate winters. And so what is grown in these areas? Well, it's something called horticulture. It's specifically fruits, vegetables, and flowers. All right, so let's get into that horticulture for a second here. The 2 most important cash crops in Mediterranean agriculture are olives and grapes. In fact, 2/3 of the world's wine is produced within these regions. And half of all these farms also produce wheat as well. All right, our last one here, commercial gardening and fruit farming. This type of agriculture is prominent within the southeast of the United States. Here's the reason why. This region has a long growing season that for most items grown in this area needs. It has humid climates. It has accessibility to large markets like New York City, Philadelphia, and Boston. Now, there's a type of farming practice here. It's called truck farming. It's not where you see those trucks on the side of the road that sell items. No, 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 no. What I mean by that is that these goods are grown, put onto a truck, and then sold to large processors. Now, some items grown on these farms include apples, asparagus, cherries, lettuce, mushrooms, and tomatoes, and much, much more. Okay, guys, that was it. We'll talk more about farming and MDCs in class. See you then.